I'm Matt Weber. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Communication. It's a privilege to be able to welcome you all here today. It's a privilege to be able to welcome you all here today. We're really excited, excuse me, to have Brewster Kahle here, founder and director of the Internet Archive, to talk about universal knowledge for all. For those of you who haven't been to the Internet Archive lately or at all, check it out. Not only are there more than 400 billion web pages stored there, there are also more than 10,000 live Grateful Dead concert recordings. It's pretty awesome. There are also a whole host of video arcade games, which I was playing around yesterday because I haven't looked in a while. So if you haven't played Paperboy in a while, for instance, you can go play Paperboy via a video game emulator for free on the Internet Archive. It truly is amazing how much is available there. I'm going to hand things over to Michael Lesk from the Department of Library and Information Sciences to say a little bit more about Brewster and his work. Their collaboration goes way back, so hopefully Mike can tell you a little bit more about that and go from there. Thank you.
I'm going to try to be very quick. I've known Brewster for many years, since he was at MIT. He did one of the very first networked information systems that searched across multiple places. It was called Waze. And then he did an internet browser that told you where other people who had been to your page had gone, which was called Alexa. And then he started building this incredible service, the Internet Archive, which gathers all sorts of information. People know it best for the web searching, but as Matt said, it now has television, media, historic recordings, whatnot. And it's an immense service to everybody, ranging from patent attorneys to political reporters. There was a comment at lunch that everybody doing politics now is spending their time on the Internet Archive finding out the history of the opposition candidates. So as a person who does service to a great many people and who has a great vision, let me introduce Brewster.
Thank you. Really great to be here. Okay, let me tell you a story about Mike Lesk. So, whenever I've gone into a subfield, I find out that Mike has written a key paper on it 10 years before. That's sort of that deflating feeling. You know when you sort of think you've got something new, and then it's like, oh. So one of these was direction assistance. This was in the mid-1980s. We made a thing, and we were just having answering machines, and they would just have these 900 numbers, and you could call it up and say, this is Thinking Machine's direction assistant. Can I help you? Tell me where you are and where you want to go, and I will tell you how to drive there. Tell me where you are by telling me your telephone number or your address. All right, this is way before Google Maps or whatever. And so you try to, use your piece, put this all in. And so we did this system. It worked terribly. Even if you could get people really good directions, they didn't follow them. And it turned out Mike had written a paper about exactly people following directions 10 years before. It turns out that half people do directions by writing a map, and half do it by a list of instructions of turn right, turn left, turn. And these people, if you ask your friends, it's like, oh no, I have to draw a map. Or even if you tell me this way, I'm going to make a map. Or no, I need it as a story. And actually, there was Mike. And anyway, he keeps going on like this. But it's a real honor to be here. What I thought I'd talk about today is, this. Universal access to all knowledge. Can we go and make the Library of Alexandria version 2? Can we make it so that everything ever published, all the books, music, video, web pages, software, ever, are available to anybody at any time they want to have access to it? Can you do this? And it turns out the answer is yes, you can. Technologically, it's completely doable. But again, as Mike pointed out about 10 years ago, the problem is institutional responsibility. Who's supposed to do what has been really a puzzle in this area. And so, being a geek, I say, all right, well, why don't we just start doing it? And so I'm going to suggest through this talk sort of how the Internet Archive and the projects with a bunch of other organizations and sort of how you guys are key towards making this idea come true, fits in. And I'm going to try to do it in short enough time that you're not completely blanked out, so there'll be good Q&A time. And as I did in my old technical school, if you ever get bored or whatever, feel free to leave. It's okay. Or you have to go someplace, it's just fine. So who are we? I started this organization called the Internet Archive. It's a nonprofit library located in San Francisco in this cool old former church in San Francisco. We started about 20 years ago. We're about 140 people, about 100 of us scanning books, but it's a small core group that is building this. We see ourselves in the tradition of libraries, and I like what people carve above the doors of libraries. So this is what's carved above the Boston Public Library, free to all. And that's, I find it interesting because these buildings were built by the robber barons. We just visited the New Brunswick Public Library, which is the coolest little building. And what does it say on the top?
Free to.
No? It's free public library, is what it says. And it's free to all. And this is these guys that built this, the robber barons, were not nice guys. These are the capitalist caricature guys, right? Everything's mine. But libraries are special. The idea of information has to flow to be useful. And so they carved free to all. So being a geek, a self-proclaimed geek, librarian, to try to go and get everything online, I'm going to go over books, music, video, web pages, software, and sort of say, well, how big is it? How hard is it? What are the legal issues? What are the costs? How are we doing towards making these sorts of things available? So I'm going to start with texts first. So we want all books online. You have to answer the question, just like, how big is it? How much text is there? The largest print library by far is the Library of Congress, about 28 million books. A book, if you put it on a hard drive in Microsoft Word, is about a megabyte. 28 million megabytes, it goes mega, giga, tera. So it's 28 terabytes. 28 terabytes is 4 hard drives. 4 hard drives, so that you could basically buy enough storage to store all the words in the Library of Congress and spend less than you pay in rent in a month. Cool, right? So we're now at a place that we can think very differently about all the published works of humankind. That the idea of small enough to be able to play with it, to do something interesting with it. And then what do you get? Well, you get these things on screens, right? If you do with the old things, you can basically photograph them. And, it used to be kind of revolutionary that you can see a book on a screen, but now it's like, yeah, okay, yeah. And that's only happened in the last about 5-10 years. Well, we found some people really want the books printed back out again. So we made a print-on-demand bookmobile. So we made a van and put a satellite dish on the top, and we download, print, and bind books. And it costs about $1 a book for the parts cost of a book, of a short book, like an Alice in Wonderland. $1 a book. And $1 a book, you could give books away. Somebody named Mike Lesk said that there was a study at Harvard said it was $3. It cost them $3 to lend a book out and put it back on the shelf. So it costs less to download, print, and bind it. So if you want it back, then don't go through dead trees. You should collect them back up again. But the idea is you can go and think differently of having 1 million books inside a small van. So we started a couple of them in India. This is the first day at the Library of Alexandria in Egypt, the new library, the old one burned down. Here's an engineer with a kid. Here's this kid's first book he ever owned, and we even tried it in rural Uganda, and it worked just great. So the idea of digitizing these materials, not only do you get them on screens, but you can get them printed back out again. They've made these sort of Rube Goldberg machines that are really kind of weird. They go and build and make it, and out comes the book. Whoop. I think it's going to be screens, right? Screens are just going everywhere. This is the one laptop per child. And even scanned books on things like iPads and stuff look beautiful. They really look great, even though they don't have to be the reformatting style ebooks. And so the goal out of this is to take those big libraries, like Library of Congress, digitize them, and have them available in all sorts of different forms. One of my favorite is, this one is a talking book. So we can take these books, run them through optical character recognition to find the words, and it will read a little bit like this. But you can actually listen to the books. So this is for the blind and dyslexic. So we can now take these books just as easily as putting them online and make them available to the blind and dyslexic. And we're doing this at scale. The question is how do you do this within cost issues? Can you get access to the books? Will people sue you out of existence? These sorts of questions, and we've been answering these and in the affirmative that you can actually do this, and no, they won't sue you out of existence. So, and the Library of Alexandria project we were involved in, Million Books Project, we got them a bunch of scanners. Here's a guy scanning. He doesn't look too happy about it, does he? Anyway, they've now digitized about 170,000 Arabic books, and that worked pretty well. We designed and built our own scanners, so the cameras and take pictures, and they're really pretty great. Here's a scanning center in San Francisco. Down the center is microfilm scanning. How many people have used microfilm ever? How many people really enjoy using microfilm? Okay, we got one. All right. Nobody wants to use microfilm anymore. But a lot of work was done photographing and stuff, and it's really easy to go and digitize microfilm. So let's just go digitize the whole darn thing. So this is a scanning center where we digitize books, and we've been getting really great stuff done. This is a book from the rare book collection at the UC California Berkeley Library of early texts from Asia. This is modern materials being digitized in Beijing at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. And so we digitize about 1,000 books every day. So it's awesome, it's going okay. But I've been looking for a complete collection. The idea is to try to find, can we get everything in a particular language? Can we get something complete done? So I've gone around to these different places like Greece and said, why don't we do this? And they were sort of too busy imploding. And then I went to Iceland. They were having their own financial troubles. But the Balinese said yes. And so they said, yes, let's go and digitize everything ever written in Balinese. And it turns out there are about 3 million Balinese, and they write books on palm leaves. How cool is that? And so there's palm leaves, and there are these stripes. They scratch the words into them. This is what palm leaves look like. And a little too early on that. And so we've basically been photographing these, and then the question is, how do you read them? Right? And it turned out priests can read them. And the other things that they do with them is they make them into like shadow puppet plays. So these are the texts that the way that they're actually performed is not just like reading a book, but like shadow puppet plays, or these cool theater pieces. Okay, do I have the best job in the world? So anyway, we get to go deal with the Balinese and doing these sorts of material. So I'd like to just give a round of applause for the Balinese to be the first complete literature to go online and say, yes, let's go and get it all online. In general, what we've been doing is doing what we can. We do about 1,000 books every day. We have 30 scanning centers in 8 countries. Where libraries basically support these. So we do all the back-end stuff. We sometimes manage the people. Sometimes they're managed by the individual libraries. And we're digitizing and making these things go online. You may say, hey, isn't Google done this? It's like, yeah, Google did an awful lot of this already. But they locked it up. They basically took the public domain and they put restrictions on it, often at the insistence of the libraries, which isn't so good. And so it's been locked up. And then there was the in-copyright materials got all tangled up in court because they were going to make this monopoly, and so that got stopped. So if they're the Microsoft, we're the Linux. So we're kind of the open guys. And we've been making some progress. We've got about 3 million all open ebooks. Remember, 28 million is Library of Congress. I would say 10 million is a sort of a classic great library. So that would be a Princeton, a Yale, or a Boston Public Library is sort of a 10 million book. And we've basically got a lot of the public domain books basically done. We've been digitizing in copyright materials that are and making them available through lending, and I'll go into how that works. And we've got a lot of modern books through this lending library and also the blind and dyslexic. And we have maybe 8 million books left to go. So one question is, how can we bring modern materials available to people and not make people mad? We made this site called openlibrary.org. Almost all the rest of our services are on archive.org, openlibrary.org. It's a different site. We get a lot of people visiting, and you can go and borrow a book. So we try to buy books from publishers. If we can't buy them, then we digitize to lend them. So this is a book that we bought. HTML5 for web designers. It was published in 2010, but it's been checked out. It's like, oops, no, so I can add it to my waiting list. If you take a less popular book like the Mayflower Ancestors and Their Descendants, surprise, that's not checked out. So this is a book that's come from the Boston Public Library. So the Boston Public Library had this book. It's from 1994. We digitized it, and we put it on our site, and we lend it on their behalf. So we are lending, so there's only one reader at a time. And if there's another person that wants it, then they have to wait. So it's one reader at a time. So it's kind of emulating the brokenness of the old style library system in the digital world as a mechanism of making it so it doesn't interfere with publishers maybe trying to continue to sell these materials. And so you can go and say, I want to borrow that, and then you get a different formats, and I say I might want it in the in-browser page turny thing, and it says that it's coming from the Boston Public Library, and these are the books that I've checked out. So the idea of digitizing books, it costs about 10 cents a page. 300-page book, 10 cents, 300 pages, $30 a book. $30 a book, 10 million books, $240 million. $240 million one-time cost to digitize a Princeton, a Yale, a Boston Public Library. That's just not that much money. And we're about a quarter of the way through it already. And we've basically got the public domain done, and we're starting to work together to try to bring all libraries digital by helping them take their physical collections, and if it's already been digitized by somebody else, give them the digital version, and if it hasn't, then have them scan it and add it in. So the idea of Rutgers could go and have e-versions of all of the materials that are physically in the collections. That would be pretty neat, and you could go and do different kinds of research potentially with it, or at least for the blind and dyslexic, as much as Rutgers would want to go forward with this. The idea is to try to bring all libraries digital as opposed to going and making one library to rule them all. We don't want Google or the Internet Archive to be the only place for these things. We want all of our libraries to be the quirky, interesting places they've always been, but digital as well as physical if appropriate. So that's what we're doing with books. Music. Okay, books, music. Right, okay. How are we doing on music? Well, we started out by working in the music area in the about 15 years ago. This is in the time when there were lots of lawsuits going on. So we tried to find somebody that was happy about having their music up there, and it turned out there are lots of bands that allowed people to record their concerts and share them over the net. So it's copying the Grateful Dead. The Grateful Dead allow people to record their concerts and share them as long as nobody made any money. Interesting. No one makes any money. Somebody makes any money, you get in trouble. No money, okay. And a lot of bands copied this, and so we wrote to this. There's an intern actually who was doing our website, and he said, Brewster, you know, they're still doing this tape trading tradition. I said, I remember that. I had my Grateful Dead tapes, and he said, yeah, but it's moved online, but the files are so big that people would put them up and they'd get taken down by the university administrator or whatever, saying, too much. So I said, well, why don't we try to help them? I said, great idea. So we wrote a letter to the community that go and record concerts and trade these things around, and said, do you want unlimited storage unlimited bandwidth forever for free. And they wrote back and said, we don't believe you. But if you could do it, it would be our dream. If somebody says, if you could do it, it would be our dream, isn't that the most motivating thing people could say? And we said, okay, we're not quite sure we can make it work either, but let's try. This is in the year 2002. And we said, it was a little different than just tape trading. Let's go and get somebody in the band to say it's okay. Right? So these are trader-friendly bands, so they're okay in general. But let's get somebody in the band to say it's okay to post it on the Internet Archive. And it could be the drummer, you know, or it could be anybody. And this is a lot less than what your lawyers would suggest in terms of all the permissions. And the idea is to see if we can get this thing up. And we started getting these tapers started going and asking their favorite bands, and we started getting people saying yes. And it's been about 3 bands every day for 10 years. And we now have 6,000 bands, 130,000 concerts, and, well, everything the Grateful Dead has ever done. And actually, I should change the slide. It is now over 10,000 concert recordings. It turns out they didn't have 10,000 concerts. They have significantly fewer, but there are a lot of people taping. And this is a community that loves to archive. They really care about the Grateful Dead. And so they basically make sure everything's right. They argue about which microphone is better. It's cool that basically they've outsourced their distribution system of their concert recordings. And so this was a first start at this. There's other things that we've done in the music area. There was a thing before MP3s. It turns out that was a format that came out in, I don't know, 2000, something like that. Before that, there were these awful audio formats like AIFF. You probably wrote that one. Yeah, I don't know. No? Okay, anyway. So there was this Internet Underground Music Archive, and they had all these things. And that company is so gone, but it was the first sort of posting your own stuff up on the net. And so people would post their own things, people enjoyed it, but the company just disappeared. But a couple years ago, a friend came and said, I have it all on a hard drive. And we said, well, what should we do with it? Let's post it. And so we posted the 43,000 albums that were on the Internet Underground Music Archive, and everybody was happy. The founders were happy. They came up, they're like, woohoo, there it is. And people said, wow, I haven't heard that in forever. Anyway, so it all worked very well. There's a whole type of people that are doing net labels, because CD labels are so difficult to make work. They moved online, and we basically performed free hosting, so there's lots of that. And the reason why I'm going over this in such detail is you guys can do this too. You guys may be in library school, you're going to go off in libraries, whatever. The idea of hosting materials, the cultural materials from your communities, is something you should do, you have to do. And if you can't do it yourself, have them put it on the Internet Archive and help basically people preserve the great works that are going on in the concerts and the bands and the fun things that are going on that are not necessarily the stodgy, Shakespeare equivalents, right? These are just the community doing great stuff. And this is a role and support structure that we can perform for everybody. We start to move on to labels of CDs, and we're starting to get better at it. We're now starting to digitize CDs and LPs. We're working with the Archive of Contemporary Music in New York City. There's me going digitizing with my sons, putting my sons to work, and starting to digitize these large collections. People have started to donate 78 RPM records up a storm, as well as LPs. So we're starting to get much more collections, physical collections at the Internet Archive, but also working with others. It turns out Rutgers has got an unbelievable jazz collection. You probably don't know it because it's on disc and they're kind of clunky and they might scratch, so you're not allowed to have it. And so let's digitize it and make it available as far as people feel comfortable going with it. So we're at least getting good at digitizing CDs, and we're trying to basically, again, bring everybody's collection digital. So if you have it physically, point, you get a digital version if somebody else has digitized it. If not, digitize it as equal. So that the next person, if they have a physical copy, they don't have to digitize it. Coordinated collection development, distributed preservation, and then access in local as well as sort of unified websites, as much as you can make this work within the legal regimes. But local access often works quite well. So the idea of we're starting to do this up a storm with music, and some of it is we're doing things in the research area. So here's our friendly researcher at Columbia University, Daniel Ellis, and he says that the basic problem is getting access to large collections of commercial music. That's what's holding his whole field back for doing automatic classification of these materials. And so if that's the problem that researchers need, what librarians do? Well, go and provide the collection. And we'll try to find a way to do it in such a way that it doesn't make people mad, and that's been working out great with this researcher and several others to go and use these collections not only just on a local inside the Internet Archive basis, but also for researchers. So here's our little listening area at the Internet Archive that you can go and plug in and listen to anything. So even with music, it's cost effective to go and download, to digitize these materials. You can give some level of access to these, and we're trying to figure out how far we can go with the in-copyright formally sold things, but there's a lot of other things you can do. So we now have, I don't know, about 5,000 collections of different kinds of audio materials, about 2 million items from lots of different collections as this Internet Archive. So we've basically been free hosting. We help in digitizing, but often people have things and they make them available. So even music, which comes larger just because the audio files are larger, but it's still within bounds of a small organization like ours, and certainly within an organization like Rutgers, to be able to try to do a complete collection of all the recorded music or audio that's been done. Moving images. Most people think of moving images as kind of your Hollywood films. We don't have a very good collection of this yet. We have things that are out of copyright for one reason or another, and so we have a few thousand feature-length films. What we do have is old films that are like old educational films or government propaganda films or training films. In junior high school, when there was a substitute teacher in my town, they wheel in this projector and they show these funny movies. These you want to be a physicist or a typesetter or learn to be a librarian or like this one, which is Are You Ready for Marriage? Right? Anyway, so these are films. And we have these, and we've been digitizing these and putting them up online. And they've been wildly popular. We have no idea why. So it's the duck and cover, it's the propaganda films. Anyway, so a lot of these things are out there, and we've been basically working with some of these archives towards digitizing these things and making them available. And it's been working great. We then, long before YouTube, offered people an ability to go and upload things and make them back available. YouTube ran over us in very short order in terms of the volume, but people still upload about 1,000 films a day to us. And we get things like Duck and Cover, or sort of different political things, or there was all these movies came around. You can make Lego movies. So you have Legos, you have still camera, and you take a picture, and you move a little bit, and take a picture, and move a little bit, and take a little bit, and you get these Lego guys walking around. Anyway, it was a whole genre, and they started uploading to the Internet Archive, which is awesome, and so we made a little collection for them. And anyway, lectures and those sorts of things. So if you make your resources available to help communities form around things, then you can people do, and often these are communities that don't have any institutional backing at all. They're just communities that love something. They have a content-oriented thing, and their artifacts are these digital collections, and you can go and make these available, so we've been doing that. We've also been digitizing things, and we've been starting to digitize a lot of VHS tapes. So VHS tapes, I think I was kind of the babysitter of the 1980s. So it was when mom was too busy, and they just slam in the videotape, and you get to watch this thing again. And so we have a lot of those. So instead of going and doing the Disney things, what we've gotten is these VHS tapes. We've looked to see what's not available for sale on a DVD. If it's not available for sale on a DVD, we digitize it, we put it up, and then if anybody complains, we take it down. And it turns out nobody asks us to take anything down. And we've been having fun with sort of bringing these types of collections. So even VHS type things, we can start to make more massively available. Television comes larger. We started collecting in, that's bad. Authentication failed on network EduRoam. I don't need EduRoam. Okay. We started collecting in the year 2000 television. Library of Congress was supposed to, they didn't, so we just hit the record button. Russian, Chinese, Japanese, Iraqi, Al Jazeera, BBC, CNN, ABC, Fox, 24 hours a day DVD quality. What? So just whoop, a lot of television. And when September 11 happened, we said, you know, like a lot of other people, what can I do to help? So we went and took 1 week of television news from just before the first planes went in, through 1 week after, across the whole world. What did they see? What was on television news? And it was absolutely fascinating. Anyway, so we put this up, and we were worried that people would sue us, but they didn't. So they said all that worked. What we've gone on to do now is to do lending of television news. So we've taken the U.S. television news collection, and with this we get closed captions, so we know what it is they're saying. Closed captions are those things for the hearing. In bars, sometimes you see them overlaying what it is they're saying, and we're using that as search terms so that you can take all of the television news and search. Say you wanted to find Snowden, you'd find out sort of, you'll graph sort of when did programs started mentioning Snowden and all of them, and you can click and see a clip. We want everyone to be a Jon Stewart Research Department intern. The idea is to make it so that anybody can go and search on what people said on television news and be able to get clips and put them into their blogs and critique them. If they want the whole program, then we burn it onto a DVD and lend it to you, and then you have to send it back after 30 days. Why do that? Again, it's just lending to try to basically stay out of the way of publishers that are still trying to make some money out of all of this. But this approach towards being able to search, we can search now back to mid-2009, and to be able to find what it is people said and be able to compare and contrast. I recently had kids in high school, I learned that critical thinking requires quoting, compare, and contrast. Right? How can you write an essay if you can't quote, compare, and contrast? And but television news just flows over. If you can't quote it, you can't compare and contrast it. And so it just sort of flows over, and there's no real holding them accountable. So they'll just make stuff up. And they just make stuff up. They just make up stuff. And so the idea is to try to make it so that we can do this. And it turned out that all the networks were thrilled because they've been trying to build systems like this and not being much able to do it. Anyway, for their internal use. And it's generally all around worked as a mechanism of going and finding television news, at least. We haven't done the entertainment programming or made that accessible. We don't really know how to do that. We'd like to do commercials. So if you want to do a project to go and find commercials and make those available, I think that would be really fantastic as well. But we're starting to get there with television. Digitizing video is just not that expensive. We have 1 million videos on the archive, lots and lots of television, and lots of collections. So even video is doable. So if you do this type of thing as publicly as we do, allow people to go and upload books, music, video, download things, you start to attract some attention from people you don't want to attract attention from. For instance, the FBI came and they gave us one of these nasty grams called a national security letter. A national security letter is one of these demands, it's one of these creatures of the Patriot Act that came out of after 9/11, where they can go and demand information from a telco or an information service, and you have to answer their question, and you can't tell anybody that you've ever been asked. It's the weirdest thing. And so we got one of these, and our lawyers, we don't have any lawyers on staff, but our lawyers are the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Ever heard of them? Anyway, they're completely great. Yes. Anyway, they dealt with the FBI, and they came and said, Brewster, this is not a good day for you. You got one of these national security guys. And so I want to push back. They said, you can't. Yeah. Well, is there somebody I can appeal to? No. What if we don't? Jail. Can I ask my board what to do? No. Among my family? No. Is there anything I can do? Well, you can sue the United States government. So we sued the United States government. And we won. So it turned out they really didn't need that information as much as they said they did, and they wanted to back out of it. And the only reason why I can tell you this is because as a demand for getting out of this lawsuit, and not having us go to the Supreme Court over it, was to be able to publish that this happens, and even a little picture of the lawyers to call if this happens to you. So the idea of pushing back is possible and supported and supportable, even in this, because we are a library. And people understand some of the issues around getting rounded up for what it is you've read. That's got a long and horrible history to it, and people understand that. And it's gotten bad out there, guys. So part of Snowden's revelations that was put in the Guardian, into the Intercept recently, is the readers of the WikiLeaks website were watched by the GCHQ, that's the Secret Service out of in the UK. They turned over who was looking at WikiLeaks to the NSA, and the NSA used that as reasons to target those people as suspect enough in the United States for extra surveillance. So readers of WikiLeaks were targeted in the United States by our security agency. This isn't good. So we have some basic structural problems to the World Wide Web, and we in the library world have a role to play in protecting reader privacy. This is one, it's baked into our field, and we should take it very seriously. And if we take it seriously, other people will respect it, and you'll get helped out along the way. Okay, a little more upbeat. Software. So software is tricky because it lives on floppies and things like that aren't very easy to archive. And an Internet Archive person, Jason Scott, came up with a wacky idea of going and taking these communities that have been going and collecting the floppies and putting them into digital files and making emulators, and made it work in a browser. So as Matt mentioned, you can actually go to the archive website, which I highly recommend you do right away and not listen to any more of this talk. It's boring. Compared to playing The Hobbit version 1.0 in 1982. And you can go and click, and it basically runs an emulator in JavaScript in your browser of like an IBM PC or a Atari machine or an old arcade game. And it actually works pretty well for wasting a lot of time. So anyway, it's been very popular to bring this old software back up again as a library to go and bring it forward, and that's been going along very well. Okay, books, music, video, software. Okay, we're probably best known for crawling the World Wide Web. We've been crawling the World Wide Web a snapshot every 2 months since 1996. We take a snapshot and then start again. It's another snapshot, and start again. It's another snapshot, and it's starting to get big. So we collect about 1 billion pages every week, and we have about 450 billion pages now publicly available through the Wayback Machine. And this is what Yahoo looked like in 1996, kind of clean, kind of like Google today, or pets.com. So this is a sock puppet. And anyway, so there are these different, or bad old web design. I mean, we were all guilty of this back in 1996. And so this is sort of what things look like, or Chaos Communications Camp, and the like. So we have this, and it's been starting to get very popular and used by about 600,000 people a day. And we don't really know what people use it for because we don't keep IP addresses of our users, so we actually don't know what people are using it for. But sometimes people come back and say, oh, it was very useful because of X. For instance, here's a press release from the White House about the president standing on an aircraft carrier saying, mission accomplished. That President Bush announces combat operations in Iraq have ended. But a couple days later, that press release was changed. And it says, President Bush announces major combat operations have in Iraq have ended. There was no notice that they changed a press release in retrospect. It was just changed. And that's one of those things in George Orwell's 1984 that you sort of watch for. The idea of going back, being able to change news in the past is kind of a problem. So it's a reason for having third-party archives of these things and trying to make them as available to people so that they can go and make things, hold people accountable. We've also been using this, we have robots that collect the web, but we also work with about 1,000 librarians all over the world. About 350 institutions have librarians that are going and telling us through this Archive It subscription tool what sites should be archived at different regularities. And sometimes they're on subject areas, sometimes they're just group actions around things like the Japanese disaster. So the Japanese disaster happened in 2011, and a lot of people sort of came together all over the world to go and build this collection and say, this is, we should archive this and this and this and this and this and this. And it's built an amazing collection of materials that are archived but aren't on the live web anymore. Archived but not on the live web. So this was an example of people coming together to go and create archives of these sorts of events. And we were able to actually go back to Japan and present this to the National Library in Japan, and they did the whole sort of handshake thing and the thank you that they do very well there, because they didn't feel they could collect websites under their law. So we did, and then we gave it to them, and that works. Okay, so whatever works, the idea is to try to make sure that these materials are collected and end up in the right places. Rare books and letters, we're getting better at archives themselves. It's just photographs of these materials. It's basically cameras, and we've basically gotten good at doing this type of thing. So we're getting better at the old archiving materials. But then also, what do we do about the new stuff? So, we have our stuff, our family archives are now starting to be all over these other companies, and these guys don't really care much about what you're doing. So even rich companies have been turning off their collections. So for instance, Yahoo used to have Yahoo videos. They're not there anymore. We have an archive of them. Google video before YouTube, it's about 6 million videos. We figured out how to archive those before they took it down. GeoCities is famously gone. Apple Computer, the most valuable company in the world, didn't think that they could keep 200 terabytes still running of MobileMe, which was hundreds of thousands of people's websites. So they just turned it off. So we've gone in and gone and archived this. So if you think you're safe going and having your memories in these, it's like, yeah, think again. Archive yourself, but it's hard, right? How many of us really do that? We probably barely back up our own machines, much less these other types of services. So we're trying to figure out how to do personal digital archives. I'm almost there. So books, music, video, web pages, software. The idea of collecting all of these materials, making them available is cost effective and doable. And it's doable by those that are sort of fanatic enough to really try to do it. Then there's this question of how do you preserve it? If we want to make the Library of Alexandria version 2, well, let's learn from the Library of Alexandria version 1. What's the Library of Alexandria version 1 best known for? Burning! Not being here anymore. It's so completely gone. It was the center of learning for 300 years at least in the ancient world. They did amazing things, and it's just completely gone. So, but if they had made another copy and put a copy in India or in China, we'd have the other works of Aristotle, the other plays of Euripides, but alas, we don't. They didn't make any copies. Okay, so lesson is make copies. So they're starting a new Library of Alexandria. And so I called them up and said, why don't we work together? That sounds great. And so we donated a copy of everything we had in 2002 to them, and they changed the architecture and they put in this beautiful plate glass. So they showed the the blinky lights thing. It was just gorgeous. Don't bury your computers in the basement. Go and certainly don't put things in the cloud, wherever that is. Go and put it right in the front, right? And anyway, that's what they did, and it's beautiful. So if you ever have a chance to go to Alexandria, it's highly suggested. We put a partial copy also in Amsterdam, and we have, this is what it looked like in San Francisco in 2008. Oh, this is fun. So we came up with this idea of doing a computer as a shipping container full of computers, or think of it as a data center in a shipping container. And then you could sit them outside, because I hate building data centers. And so Sun ran with this idea, and they gave one to us. And so this is what the Wayback Machine looked like in 2009. It sat outside in Mountain View. So I can answer the question, how big is the web? Oh, you have to ask me. How big is the web? Now, the web is 20 feet by 8 feet by 8 feet. It weighs 26,000 pounds, which if you divide it out is about 80 micrograms a hit. So that's how much a web page weighed back in 2009, and that's what it actually looked like. This is what it looks like today. Is in this former church, and it's beautiful and it blinks, and it's really kind of cool to be near. And we're up to actually a total of about 25 petabytes of data at this stage. So the idea of scaling to having multiple copies in multiple places is hard to do, because you have to make copies of things you love and give them to people that are really far away from you. And how do you go and do that, and how do you make that work over time? We're still trying to figure out what we think is important to do. We thought we'd stay out of the physical archiving business. It's like, libraries will do that, but it turns out libraries are throwing things out up a storm. They're just throwing stuff out. And when we were trying to start to digitize modern books, libraries wouldn't even lend them to us because of the copyright issues. So people started donating books, and we didn't want to throw them away. So we started getting better at physically storing things. So we now have a physical archive. The way it works is we have books. We have a slip in them, so the slip knows where the digital one is, and the digital one knows where the physical one is. So they're sort of tied as an umbilical. Protected by a box, in a shipping container, in a warehouse, surrounded by nonprofits. So we have sort of different levels of protection to try to stop what happens to libraries, which is they're destroyed. And so the idea is to try to make that not happen with our physical collections, and we're getting at least a little better at it in such a way. We now have, I guess, 1.1 million books. We have 5 shipping containers full of films. We have we have 1 shipping container full of all of Ted Nelson's stuff. We have so we're trying out sort of what does it mean to be a physical archive of somebody's stuff. And that's sort of a different way of viewing things. And also we have records and the like. So we're getting better at this. So even physical preservation is doable. So that's actually most of the sort of the projects we're doing and sort of how we're doing towards a lot of this. But there are a few more things that we're doing that are towards, I'd say, still the mandate of libraries, which is getting information accessible to anybody. And there's some problems out there in the telco space in terms of it's really expensive to have connectivity. And so we've been using all of our buildings, we go and put up wireless, free wireless, no passwords, no nothing, so that people can gain access to any, if they're nearby. We think all libraries should basically be portals of information access, and go and put free open Wi-Fi up on their roofs, and it's been going along fairly well. Another form of sustainability for us is we not only have to preserve the materials, we have to preserve the employees. So without the employees, we can't operate. And in San Francisco, things are getting famously expensive. It's a problem. But it turns out it's a problem everywhere, that people are spending 30 to 60% of their income on housing. It's dreadful. It makes it very difficult for people to feel secure in working in the nonprofit sector. So we said, okay, how do we solve this? Well, we're actually trying housing. So we bought an apartment building, and we're trying open source housing to make permanently affordable housing for nonprofit workers. And we even started a credit union. We have 2 people from our the Internet Archive Credit Union, Jean and Kathy, yay, to try to make a financial institution that will help nonprofit workers get into housing that is permanently affordable to people in so this is our credit union ATM in San Francisco. And so the idea is to basically find a system that people can feel secure working in the nonprofit sector and making it go. We've actually ended up with a real headache in this whole credit union business. We thought it wouldn't be that hard to make, but it turned out that the regulators have been very, very difficult to deal with. And so I'm hoping that it continues along. And one hope is actually that Rutgers University, maybe in the B school or something, would want to go and be an active participant, because actually it turns out this credit union is in New Brunswick. I was there before this talk getting photographed by the New York Times because they're going to write an article up on us because of the troubles we're having with the regulators trying to get this whole thing to work. And to be fair, one of the reasons why the regulators started breathing down our necks is because, with permission, we had given accounts to a couple of Bitcoin companies. And they basically said, they said, oh, that's a mistake. You've got to cancel those Bitcoin companies. So we did. It put one of them out of business, unfortunately. But now they still won't leave us alone. So it's been kind of a problem. But we have played with Bitcoin stuff because people have been donating Bitcoin to the Internet Archive. Because the Internet Archive is an internet organization and lots of people have been donating Bitcoin. How many people have heard of Bitcoin? How many people have any Bitcoin? Oh, not very many. If anybody wants to stay afterwards and get $5 worth of Bitcoins from me, I'll be perfectly happy if you'll set up your iPhone to get a wallet, then you're off and running. And if you don't use it, then just donate it to EFF or the Wikipedia or Internet Archive. But anyway, Bitcoin is pretty fun, and we've been finding that it's an interesting internet-oriented project that the Internet Archive is involved in, because we see ourselves as supporting the distributed systems, whether it's the BitTorrents and the Bitcoins and the like that are the next generation. Projects that need help. So we're redesigning the Wayback Machine. If you'd like to help out on any of this, we would love it. Elasticsearch for books, webs, TV, software archiving, to go and make it so that lots of people can go and upload things, and the distributed web, which would mean redesigning the web to be better archivally and a more distributed infrastructure than it is now to protect reader privacy and reliability. In conclusion, universal access to all knowledge can be done, and I think it's an opportunity of our generation to do something really fabulous. I think it can be remembered like the Library of Alexandria or the Man on the Moon program. Universal access to all knowledge is possible and doable by our generation. And to end, above the door of the Carnegie Library in Pittsburgh by Andrew Carnegie was free to the people. Thank you very much. Do we have time?
We do. We have plenty of time.
And remember, if you need to leave, go for it.
We have about a half hour for Q&A, so we have plenty of time for discussion. Before I turn things over, I just wanted to make a couple really quick comments. There's been an article floating around today, I think it was published today on Slate, by Dan Gilmore at University of Arizona, calling for, recruiting for, advocating for Brewster as the next Librarian of Congress. I think we... I think we can all see in this call for universal access to knowledge that we have a strong candidate here for the next Librarian of Congress. We also have in Brewster a very strong partner for research here at Rutgers University in partnership with the Internet Archive and with two soon-to-be-announced grants. We have nearly $1 million in funding that we have here at Rutgers in partnership with the Internet Archive to build better tools for researchers to access the Internet Archive's amazing database. We were talking about the transparency of these websites and the way they ebb and flow. The average lifespan of a website today is just barely 100 days. That's a scary, scary fact when you think about how much content is on the web. So with that, I will hand things over to you for any questions that you have. And
yes.
Any questions?
So really, we are interested in people using these data sets for new and different purposes. We're not the most customer service oriented, but actually some of these programs are to make it so that they're easier ways of accessing. We'd like to basically encourage big data research. It's not that hard to program if you don't go through necessarily the computer science hazing process. That you can go through and get things done, put up a website, do some interesting things on top of these collections, and please do. Questions?
Hi, okay, so first of all, thank you for your contribution. I'll take that. Okay, I'll repeat that. Hello. Thank you for your contributions and your team. Everyone's doing really, really important things, I think, for humanity. I'm curious, as far as, you have a vast amount of information that you're trying to archive and present to people in a, digestible format, and I'm wondering what your approach has been from a UX perspective on presenting that to people in a seamless kind of way, and maybe how it's evolved or how you'd like to see it evolve to,
Yeah, how have we done on the user interface to this? And I'd say not well enough. The Internet Archive is a vast trove of data, and we really thought of ourselves as a wholesaler. So basically having these collections and other people would run with it. Turned out they didn't. And so we started putting these very simple systems, like the Wayback Machine is kind of as simple a system as you can imagine. You really want search, but you don't get it. And so it's been a struggle. And so I'd say we've now got our collections in good shape, our hardware in good shape, and we're now looking for upping our game, but also looking to engage with others so that they can take things and run with it themselves. So we'd like to stay in the sort of bulk access, but also get better at the onesie, twosie access. We started as an archive of the internet, and we sort of became an archive on the internet, and we're really transitioning now to help bring libraries digital, or build libraries together. So basically make it so communities can use the Internet Archive's resources, whether it's digitizing or hosting, to go and build their own views and their own materials online. So if you guys are UX oriented, let's have some fun. A lot of these collections are in really good shape. Sort of going like the music collection, and we're talking about the web collection. Some of it's hard, some of it's easy. The idea is let's put 10 interfaces on top of these materials, 20, 30. Let's go stamp out some things that would be different ways of viewing these materials in new and different ways. So, not good enough.
Do you have any like APIs or?
Yes, we have APIs, and so those exist. You search for them on these different areas. But it takes diving in.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. I was thinking about two of your comments. One, which is that people really enjoyed watching the training videos and you didn't know why. And two, that you preceded YouTube with the ability for users to upload their own materials, but then was surpassed by YouTube in popularity. So I was wondering if you have any thoughts on public perception of archives as having potentially less interesting material than commercial platforms, and what the organization would do, to help people realize, the value of the material you have.
Do you know why people are using the training videos?
Maybe they want to learn how to duck and cover.
Yeah. So we get between 2 million and 3 million users every day. We're about the 250th most popular website, which we think is pretty cool. Wikipedia is like number 5, but there are 100 million websites out there, and we're number 250. So it turns out people want old stuff. That's really good news. But could we be better? Yes. So I think there's better user experience and the like, and better integration with Google. A lot of how people find things on the Internet Archive is they never know they went to the Internet Archive. You've probably used the Internet Archive in the last month, and you didn't even know it. So there's how do we go and integrate better with the existing services? We'd love it such that if you were on Firefox browser and you hit a page that's 404, it would go and say, yeah, but there's a version in the Wayback Machine. You want it? That'd be great. trying to get that through has been a little bit challenging. So I think the next step would be to go and do a little plug-in to go and show how popular that would be. But we haven't done it. Basically, what we've been working on is bottom-up, trying to at least keep the stuff safe and making it bulk accessible, and now putting user interfaces on it. We don't really have the current funding to really do a lot of the user interface, and we also not trying to be the library to end all libraries. We really want this to be a big community effort towards not only building the collections, but making them accessible to our users. So we're not doing well enough. Is it that people that they think that archives are stodgy? I think only if we act stodgy. I think the Grateful Dead heads are just perfectly happy to come to our site and use it there. So I think if we just act peppy and are good, they will come.
Yeah. Shades of H.G. Wells and the World Encyclopedia.
Yes.
Um,
And the open conspiracy.
Putting on a librarian's hat, 10 million books is not the same as the library at Yale or Princeton or Harvard. It's 10 million books, which, maybe 3 million of them are the complete Balinese collection. Another million or so are the things that the Library of Congress had to buy from Yugoslavia so that they could spend the dinars, and so on. Okay, so to say that 10 million books, just the number, isn't,
You're right.
says something different. There's something quite a lot different about a library that's been curated, organized, and so on, right? Okay, so I would, until you get to the point where you say, oh, now we have everything that ever was. Okay, I'm not
Well, that's
sure.
setting the bar a
Okay,
little high.
Then,
I
then
think
you have missed. Okay, so what's your, and there appears to be, okay, well, tell us about curatorial standards.
so. Yeah, if you could find 10 million books that you wouldn't never want to read. But if you came up with a good set of 10 million books, I would say that would be good enough for a K through 12 and an undergraduate education collection, such that we'd be somewhere in the area of the libraries that I had access to when I was young. So I had to slog my bones into physical libraries to go and get access to these, but it was there. At this point, you guys are looking at screens. And if it's not online, it's as if it doesn't exist. I mean, it's just too big of a threshold. You'll just get by with whatever you can find. So we have to go and put the best we have to offer within reach of our children. That's what we have to do. Otherwise, you'll learn from whatever it is you have access to. And what you have access to isn't good enough yet. The 20th century is largely not there. That was another line from Mike Less that I love. He said, the 19th century, we're doing pretty well on. 21st century will take care of itself, the 21st century. But the 20th century is in trouble. We just don't have access to that. So I don't think we have to set the bar of everything to know that we've gotten there. I think we can get a good enough collection such that we've got a K through 12, an undergraduate research library online. And that would be something that we could take as a major accomplishment. There's always more to do. I would think if you were going to say the thing that's missing from a Yale or a Princeton library in this vision is the librarians. So we need a whole mechanism of having people involved in all of this to keep it up to date, explaining it to people, going and adapting the materials over time to the communities that are coming in with questions. So this has got to be a big collaborative project. The cool thing is we're opening it up to anybody, that lots of people are curious enough to want access to these materials. They're not just those that are in the big libraries or in the big universities who want to have access. Lots of people want to have access to these materials, which is great. Also, people have an urge to help each other, So if we can make it so that lots of people can be a part-time librarian, and everybody can be a part-time archivist, and everybody can be a lifelong reader and a lifelong learner, then we will have lived some of the goal of the internet as this sort of library of everything. But we're really not there yet. And so this call is to try to say, we have the materials in our collections. We have the budgets to be able to do that. We have the mandate. We have the legal disposition to be able to, let's get on with it. Get the materials online so that those that are reading things on screens can get access to it.
Hi there, Mr. Kahle. My job here at Rutgers is to deal with long-term preservation of digital objects.
Yes.
And part of that deals with format obsolescence. So things like Flash being removed as an internet standard, thank goodness. Good for progression, good for things going forward, but then we have to worry about the content, all of the thousands of websites that we've done in Flash and past that have good information. So my question is, what plan, if there is one for Internet Archive, has been articulated for making sure that the stuff that we archive now will be available 20, 30 years from now on whatever screen we're using now?
Right. Long-term survivability and sustainability. There's so typically it's trying to keep the bits alive, and then there's the even if you keep the bits alive, can you read them? Right. So those are typically the two problems. I'd add a third, which is can we keep our institutions interested in it? So survivability and sustainability of our institutions, I'd say, is a third. But let's hit your format obsolescence. The web pages are sort of all new enough that we haven't had to do emulation yet. But our movie collection, we started with these in MPEG-2, and we've had to translate them into 6 different formats over time. There was MPEG-2 to MPEG-1, then there was MPEG-4, but it wasn't the MPEG-4 you're thinking of. Oh no, there's DivX. DivX, that was a bad period. So we translated everything into DivX. Then it was MPEG-4. Then YouTube came out, and they made it so that Flash actually made it so you could go and see things on the web as opposed to the real media and Windows Media, QuickTime, Lossage. Anyway, so then that works. So we had to move everything to to Flash, and then we're at MPEG-4 again, but a different MPEG-4. Oh, and then Apple changed their format so to see it on an iPhone, you had to do it again. So we did it again, and so we've had to translate our movies 6 times, and it takes a cluster month to do this of just all the machines pounding away, going and moving it forward. So that's one way, is moving formats forward, and the other is emulation. And we're really pushing forward with emulation with the software area. So that's at least the approaches that we've been taking at this point. And it's all very bottom-up, grassroots sort of, well, what does it take? And trying to figure out how do we perform to this. But so far, so good. So yeah, there's bit preservation, there's format reading, but there's also survivability of our institutions. Yes?
Jeffrey Trace from the SEC here.
From the
SEC, just to read it.
Oh.
I'm just interested in the books that you lend, or
Yes.
how do you keep people from making copies and distributing them?
We use the same techniques to protect our lent books that the publishers do for their in-print works. So our Dusty Musties, we're going and digitizing, and we're putting them into Adobe Digital Editions, which is sort of this exploding PDF thing. And when Google went and started doing screen reading, we said, okay, now the publishers are ready for that. So we just emulated the same protections that the publishers use. And that's been working out fine. And I think in general, it's always been possible to rip things off from a library. It's just dorky. I think that the world's sort of, you make an effort to try to make it so that it's not doable, and we're just following the efforts that the publishers are doing, so that we're never ahead of them, so that we're not looking fast and loose with these materials.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I guess my question relates to Nick's in terms of curation. And basically, fundamentally, is everything worth keeping? I mean, is every cat video worth it?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, how many people are in favor of cat videos? Okay, dog videos. All right, everybody now. Okay. So curation. So I'd say it's somewhat of a duocracy.
How do you spell that?
Do-ocracy. So do-ocracy. It's those that care have things make it to the next generation in some fairly real sense. So we have these scanning centers in 30 libraries around the world, and they're making the decisions as to what gets digitized out of those collections and put forward to the next generation. I made sure my grandfather's books, which were long out of print, I wrote to Wiley and said, I'm going to do this. If you complain about it, write back. Didn't hear anything back, so I digitized my grandfather's books and put them up. So I think we've all got a little bit of curation in us. In terms of the YouTube collection, we were trying to figure out how to do that. Google makes it very difficult to archive them. They're sort of a we'll crawl you, you don't crawl us kind of company. And grumble. Anyway, so we figured out how to do it anyway. And the way that there's too much YouTube. We can't afford it. And actually, I'm kind of with you. There's so much on there, I'm not sure it's really worth our doing, even if we could. But we get a lot of YouTube. The way that we select it is if anything's mentioned, a YouTube video is mentioned on Twitter, we crawl it. So it's part of the zeitgeist. Or if it's on the web someplace, LinkedIn, then we crawl it. But a lot of the other things that are just sort of automatically connected to your phone, into YouTube, not so much. So that's on the web collection, we try to do what people kind of seem to care about, so that if you saw it before, you can see it again. But are we missing things? Yes, absolutely. The web is effectively infinite. We just try to collect the things that are kind of human-generated or human-oriented. And there are only so many humans. And there are not that many of us. And we're outnumbered by machines at this point. So we're trying to concentrate on the output of humanity. Is our general selection criteria. But people are trying different approaches. So I'd say it's a collaborative effort to find what should make it to the next generation. One of the nice things is we can think big, right? A petabyte is a lot of music. It's a lot of web pages. It's a lot. You can start to think about all of things that have been at least published.
Europe is talking a lot about the right to be forgotten
Yes.
via Google, and personal privacy is becoming more and more of an issue here, where with data sets, things people put up when they're younger, and when you're crossed on the web, you pick that up, and they want to take it down at some point.
Yeah.
Are those considerations that you have to think about, and if so, how do you
all the time, every day, all the time. So we get requests to take things out of the Wayback Machine all the time, and you can do it in a few different ways. One is you can go and take things out by putting a robot exclusion on your website, and we will inspect it retroactively. Or people email us if they can't figure it out, and they say, take this down. And if it's their own web pages, we're very lax about it. If they're trying to say, take this page off of somebody else's web page, there's much more of a process involved. Because a lot of the web wasn't designed to be forever. So we want to be respectful of that. And maybe there's some limits to sort of how much people should be able to take down of stuff. Maybe politicians, or maybe public figures, or government agencies, or I don't know. But we've been basically using this fairly simple system called the Oakland Archives Policy that was derived in 2002, that we helped derive with the search engine companies, and also some librarians that came together to figure out what should our policy be, and we've been basically living with it. It's probably time to do it again, but that's what we've been doing. Yes. Yes.
So I work here in technology, and I'm just curious.
In the library?
Well, here at Rutgers.
Uh-huh.
And I'm curious about the challenge in keeping the bits alive. If you could share any
Sure.
information on the hardware, bandwidth, that sort of stuff.
Easy. Well, no. it takes a few very dedicated people, but it's only a few. We only have, I'd say, really 3 sysadmins for the thousands of machines and multiple data centers that we run. And we keep things really, really stupid simple. So our machines are all the same. All of them are the same. It's these Linux boxes that have 36 hard drives in them. And we basically mirror them between 2 different sites. We don't do RAID within ourselves, except the operating systems, which we don't care about. So we basically, whenever we write one place, we copy it to another. And that basically, as long as then you keep up with it, like you look at the warning flags on these things, if a drive is starting to lose it, then you replace it. And yeah, we're at petabytes, and it's able to be operated because it's so darn simple. It was basically on Jim Gray's model, which is called bricks, right? Basically making computers as bricks, and you build things out of the same brick over and over and over again. So it's basically running one operating system, and that's how the storage layer works. Then we put virtual machines on top of it, which can vary more, but the base level hardware is always on the same operating system. So it's by keeping that sort of methodical simplicity is the only thing that really keeps us to have a staff of so small, I mean, talented guys, but small staff to be able to operate a site that's pounded. You know, we put out between 20 and 30 gigabits per second on an ongoing basis to the world. It's really rattling along. It's about time for us to rethink the architecture. We're trying to think, you know, is there some cluster-based storage structures, but we haven't found it yet. Would be interested in what you guys are finding in terms of cluster-based file systems that might help for our next generation. We basically built this about, well, over the whole course of the last 8 years, but it's time to sort of rethink some of the pieces.
We have time for about one more question.
Well, I don't know if you've answered this question, but I actually used to be the cataloger at the Internet Archive down in Princeton.
Yay!
And I was always curious, how many librarians and archivists actually make up the Internet Archive? Do you know how many you actually have working for?
Employees?
Employees, yes.
So we're about 140 people. About 100 work in scanning centers, as you had. Did you have a good time doing it?
I did.
Yay! So about 100 of us work in these scanning centers all over the world, these awesome libraries. And so there are about 40 of us that work in San Francisco and others that and it's split about half and half between programmers and people who aren't programming right now. So it's sort of about 40 people. We're about $12 million a year. About $5 million comes from libraries paying 10 cents a page to turn pages. Awesome. And about $2 million comes in from libraries paying us to collect web pages for them, all these other institutions, national libraries and the like. And then about $5 million comes from foundations, including ours, to fund new projects and keep the lights on. So it's a small project in some fairly real sense, but we're able to scale quite large because we work so well with other libraries, like the Princeton Theological Seminary in Princeton. It's just fabulous to work with, and they know so much that we don't know and we don't have to know because we just work with them. So it's not, oh, aren't we great? It's actually, no, it's this whole community is great, and we just play sort of our little tech function as part of this. So I want to thank you very much for coming. I'll hang around if anybody has anything more they want to talk about. Thank you.